Hi, welcome to the MIT Sloan CIO Symposium Digital Learning Series Introduction Session. I'm pleased to have with us Alan Tate, who is the executive chair of the event. He just joined us. He's been part of the event for about 7 years, but he just stepped up into the hot seat, so to speak. Alan's an experienced entrepreneur. He's a technical program manager, a software engineer, but in addition, he also does voiceover work and is part of the Bedford board of directors, Bedford TV board of directors. So he has a lot of experience with digital and virtual and speaking on camera. So we're really excited about what's going to be happening here. So Alan, welcome.
Thanks, Christopher. It's great to be here. It's a great job to have, and I'm excited to be doing it.
We're excited to have you on board. So we're going to, at the end of this, by the way, just before we get into the conversation, we're going to be taking questions at the end of it. So if a question comes up, raise your hand, put it in the Q&A, and we will get to those at the end of this conversation. So Alan, tell us about the digital learning series. How did this come about? And tell us what's in store.
So I guess everybody knows that COVID-19 hit, and unfortunately, we had to cancel the symposium. And so the question was, how do we continue? I ended up becoming the chair about 5 weeks ago. And, honestly, we really didn't have that much experience doing virtual events. And the idea of trying to hold an all-day event in a virtual setting was a pretty heavy lift. So we looked at options and we decided that the digital learning series would be our response to COVID-19. And the idea was we would have a webinar somewhere between 1 and 2 hours every month between June and October. So the digital learning series is going to have maybe, say, 9 or 10 hours of content as compared to the original symposium, which was more like 15 hours because we were running panels in parallel. But I would say, too, that the digital learning series, in addition to being our response to COVID-19, is really a separate product because delivery of virtual content is different than the way it's delivered in an in-person event. And there's also opportunities to get into new territory, especially in 2021, should we decide to continue this. So I guess I would just emphasize that in 2020, the digital learning series is a trial, the period being from June to October. And we're going to run it in an agile fashion. So we're going to be looking for participant feedback all along the way. June, when we kick off with Tom Davenport, is really our alpha. And we hope to improve, every step of the way. And I guess the other thing I would say is, in addition to bringing the high quality speakers and bringing together the academic thought leadership from MIT with the industry thought leadership that the symposium has always brought together, we're also looking to add to that in the virtual setting, high quality production, so that we really put out a polished product. That's the goal.
So let's talk about the history of the CIO Symposium. This would have been the 17th year of the event. And, one of the hallmarks you touched on was the academic component and also the networking and in-person component. So let's talk about how the DNA of the symposium is going to continue on the digital series over time versus compacted into one day.
Yeah. So as you pointed out, the CIO Symposium is really focused on topics that have to do with leadership within the enterprise, particularly the CIO. How do they lead the enterprise in the digital era? So that's why for 2020, the digital learning series is going to continue that tradition. We're taking a lot of the topics that we had planned for the symposium, and we're putting those topics into a virtual format. But should we continue the digital learning series into 2021, especially if we have the opportunity to run it in parallel with the symposium, we have the opportunity to open up into maybe some other topics. So for example, MIT has a lot of labs across the campus, and we have the opportunity to bring in topics that have um, more of a technical focus in addition to leadership focus. We also have the opportunity to be more inclusive with our audience by reaching people who may not be able to travel to the symposium or have some more international audience.
Yeah, I love how
So,
I love how
yeah,
you, as the leader, even as co-chair prior or associate chair, have really embraced the opportunity that's inherent in a virtual experience. We all this all came very quickly in February and March. All of a sudden, the new reality presented itself, and I was very very impressed how you saw not only the challenges ahead but the opportunities. So that's great to see. And I do think that having the one day is fantastic for 900 plus people to come and meet in person and network. And we all hope that comes back, because whether it's going to your local restaurants or going to conferences, there really is that need and desire for human connection, to meet people, shake their hand, have conversations over topics or over lunches or over coffee breaks. But I do think that there's a great opportunity here for deeper dives and virtual breakout sessions. So let's talk a bit more about how you see the complementary component, or the virtual complementary, the digital learning series complementing the in-person.
yeah. Well, so I just want to say the 2021 symposium is in the top of my mind. I mean, yes, I'm working on the digital learning series right now for 2020, and there's certainly the possibility of continuing it. But I think every day about the venue for 2021, the possibility of COVID-19 being here, the possibility that we may have to actually change the symposium. So um, the symposium itself is definitely going to go on. But getting back to the digital learning series and your question, we could have the opportunity to create a membership model, to create a format where the audience themselves participates in supporting the symposium, and I think there's a lot of benefits with that. So just getting back to 2020, we've implemented a supporter model where the content itself is free, but people have the opportunity to contribute to support. And what we've done is we basically said anybody who gives a cumulative contribution of $250 is going to get 50% off of the ticket price for the 2021 symposium. But that's the tip of the iceberg. In 2021, we can begin to build networking for people who are members being people who contribute above a certain threshold. Um, Actually, our partner team has begun thinking about a tiered membership model where the investment of a particular member depends upon their status. Are they a student? Are they government? Are they military, etc.? The same type of thing that we do in the symposium with different ticketing levels for our participants.
Mhm.
But
So
I also see giving the members an opportunity to have more input into the topics that we talk about, the speakers that we pick. Those taking some of the benefits that currently sponsors have and shifting that, almost considering the membership population to be a sponsor in of themselves, and thinking about what I think about a lot is how do we bring benefit to every stakeholder, whether
mhm.
they be speakers, partners, attendees, members, all of these people, to really make it a community effort.
Yeah, and as you were talking, I was thinking about the model that the TED conference has had for years. Was originally it was in California, and now it's in Vancouver, I believe, where you have to pay a lot of money to be in person and fraternize with the speakers and the attendees. But then they have this offshoot, the TEDx series, which is self-generated content that then folds into the overall conversation that the TED series has. So that could be an opportunity too. I don't think we've ever really talked about that, but I guess there is that's something to explore, and that's the great opportunity I think that the virtual has created. In addition to companies like Facebook saying that they expect some large percentage of their staff to be working remotely permanently. So I think that this is a new reality, and this has come about by a pandemic, but I think it creates some new models and paradigms for how content is presented.
Yeah, I mean, I think that actually the digital learning series, I'm very optimistic that it can grow into something great. Of course, we have to focus on 2020 first. We have to run a series, and this conversation that you and I are having right now, if we do get positive feedback to the audience, we can do this again uh, during the actual webinars that we're putting on between June and October. I definitely want to create a model where the participants have an opportunity to express their opinions. We're going to have Q&A today, but we're also following up with a survey. There's going to be a number of mechanisms for people to weigh in. So I'm very interested to see what people feel about that. And also, if we do create this membership model, what are the things that the members would value?
Yeah, I think
We have a lot of ideas.
right. Yeah, and I think doing it over a period of time gives us a chance to respond to people's questions, comments, criticisms, for the next one. So let's talk about the next few months. What's in store for the digital learning series?
So we're kicking off in June. The moderator will be Tom Davenport. Now, you probably know Tom. He is a professor at Babson. He is a fellow at IDE. He's very involved with artificial intelligence. He consults for Deloitte. I could go on and on with all his accolades. But suffice it to say that he's just a great guy. He's a great moderator. And it's really an honor to have him be the person to kick off the digital learning series. We're going to be talking about the digital ready enterprise. I'll just remind people of what the theme was of the original symposium. So designing your enterprise for sustained success, which, you think about it now, all of a sudden we've all been hit with COVID-19, and how do we evolve that theme? Yes, we are reusing some of the content from 2020, but now we're adding a little bit more of the reality of where we are today in the world. So in July, we'll be getting into the post COVID-19 enterprise. And then we're going to be having topics talking about resiliency, business resiliency, and also the digital culture, which is a topic that George Westerman is going to be leading a panel on.
Yeah, it's a perennial topic, and even more relevant now as to how do organizations continue to work. We've always talked about the digital enterprise, but this is literally how a new urgency based on this coronavirus, that you cannot be physical, so you have to be virtual and digital in the process. I was also thinking about I've never been to a professional football game, but I've been to some sporting events where you sit in the stands, and then I'm invariably my seats suck, so I'm kind of looking down at these little ants running on the field, and I think that in many ways having a virtual event gives everyone the best seat in the house, which is kind of like watching a game on TV. You get the different slow motion replays and the different angles and the way to really get really up close and personal with whoever's speaking in this case, but also the sports people. So that's another side of the virtual that.
I agree with you, except that now I know I just made a little tick mark here. Pat's tickets for Christopher one of these days.
Yes,
might be in the cards.
Too late. I guess Brady's gone. But anyway.
Well, yeah, I know. But hey, you never know what the future is going to hold.
Okay. Most of our audience is probably not going to be New England, so they're probably turning off and booing and hissing at this point. So,
well, sorry about that, but we are in Cambridge after all. No, but that is true. TVs have come a long way. I've gotten used to watching sporting events on the TV, and there's definitely advantages to the energy of the crowd. There's no doubt about that. And there is something to be said for in-person networking. But, I personally am not convinced that we can't find ways of doing networking within a virtual space that actually has advantages over the in-person space, especially if there's ways that people who are members can connect, maybe we create virtual business cards, or maybe we have member only events. I think that there's a lot of possibilities to make the virtual networking as rich and beneficial as the in-person networking.
I agree. And I think, over the 17 years of the CIO Symposium, one of the things that we've talked about is how do we keep the conversations going after the in-person event? So there's a very rich experience for 12 hours. People are there meeting new people and hearing new content from different professors and thought leaders and practitioners. And then we all disperse back to our businesses and lives. And it's difficult to keep that going. So I really think the virtual gives us an opportunity to have those conversations already start digital and continue. And then hopefully, once this pandemic passes, it can blend between in person. So tell us more about some of the features that you're thinking about as the digital learning series evolves. You talked about some of the enhanced networking and some of the virtual communities. Is there other things you're thinking about?
Well, so let me talk a little bit about the subject matter. So again, the symposium is really focused on leading the enterprise, the CIO, and the digital learning series that will still be um, a, a pillar, right? So the idea is to have a webinar every month that really focuses on that and continues the tradition. But I think that in 2021, we could have more types of content besides the monthly webinar evolve. And those other kinds of content, whether they be breakout rooms or maybe additional webinars, would allow us to explore maybe technologies in a little bit more depth, trying to break out into some of the other labs at MIT. Perhaps look at more philosophical questions about how technology actually impacts society. And maybe with the membership model, also bring in people and allow them to ask these hard questions with their peers, explore those questions, and be better prepared to use technology in positive ways, both for the enterprise, but also just in general for everybody. Because technology is very powerful, and it's only getting more powerful. So these are conversations that we really need to have.
Yeah, and I'd love to hear from our audience members if they have uh, ideas for topics that we could explore in the coming initial digital learning series launch, as well as in future conversations as well. So if you have any questions about that, please let us know in the raise your hand, ask the question, and we'll, I think, this is an experimentation, as Alan has mentioned, but it's built on 17 years of content creation with the CIO Symposium. So, but we're always looking for great ideas. So.
Yeah, and in addition to that, I just want to touch, as you're putting questions in. So there's the content, but then there's also this idea about membership being uh, a supporter, an audience supporter that goes beyond a particular level, which is yet to be determined in 2021. But I'll say for 2020, that level is a cumulative support of $250, and the one benefit of the member is the 50% off the 2021.
That's a huge savings right there.
Right. Um, but there's other things. I mean, we could have exclusive social media groups for members. We could have an online forum where members could get together and share ideas, as you said, Christopher, all during the year and connect with each other. Um, Maybe members could get early event notifications. Or, as I said, collectively, the members could have a process of helping us select panel topics and speakers. And this is only the tip of the iceberg. I mean, when we had our team meeting, the organizing team meeting, people were coming up with ideas like maybe we can have jobs that are advertised for people within the membership community. People sharing virtual business cards,
Yeah, and I was thinking about the innovation showcase, which was always a highlight of the CIO event. At the end of the day, we'd all gather in the tent and greet our new friends, but also mingle at the innovation showcase participants, who some have gone on, many have gone on to huge success, whether IPOs or buyouts by other companies or thriving businesses. So I think there's an opportunity to have an innovation showcase component, whether that's built into a particular monthly event or as a separate event where they have an opportunity to showcase their technology or their business.
Yeah, the Innovation Showcase has always been one of my favorite parts
I
of
agree.
the symposium. Of course, I have a lot of favorites. The CIO Award, which we just had, it's always great to honor those CIOs. And by the way, those CIOs that people saw the other week, they will be participating in the digital learning series. So all the three people that you saw the other day will be joining us on a panel.
And if you haven't
Uh,
had a chance to watch that session, we'll post a link to it, because that was a great conversation between
yeah,
the three finalists and the ultimate winner.
as a volunteer on the symposium, I was also a judge for a contest that one of our co-organizers had. So it was called the IDE Inclusive Innovation Competition. So I was a judge for that for a number of years. And I liked that idea of finding startups that were able to have a positive impact on the economy. And of course, the Inclusive Innovation Competition has now been combined with MIT Solve. But, I think there could be an opportunity, probably not in 2021, but perhaps in future years, to add some kind of a virtual contest that uh, has the characteristics of what you're talking about with the innovation showcase. I mean, the innovation showcase, the way it's currently structured, I think it's really appropriate for an in-person event. As you say, when you get out of the symposium, you go into the tent and you can actually see the innovations and the people right there. That's very important. But we could evolve something, I think, within a virtual context that has that same flavor and make that perhaps a tradition of the digital learning series in the same way that the award was added to the symposium after a few years. I think this was our 13th annual CIO Leadership Award. um, I don't know exactly, in fact you probably know better than me, exactly when the innovation showcase was added.
Yeah, that was about 10, 12 years ago. I mean, with David Verrill, the executive director of the Initiative on the Digital Economy, and we had Anton Teodorescu. They've been driving that for years. I think they have a lot of fun. Quite frankly, it's amazing. They open up to applications, and the quantity and variety of companies that go in. It shows the energy in the innovation economy, not just in the Boston area, but these companies have been coming from overseas and from across the country to get in front of the audience that can eventually, ultimately, hopefully purchase their systems, whether it's CIOs, directors of technology, the attendees of the event. So yeah, I think there's a interesting way to kind of evolve that into some sort of virtual augmentation of that in-person event, which also brings me to maybe at some point the digital learning series will, if augmented reality becomes even more popular, people can put on headsets and join a virtual room. So just another opportunity that we'll see how technology evolves.
Well, there's been a couple of people who have sent me links to technologies to have this more immersive experience. And I actually have a couple of calls in with companies to talk about that. I mean, it's kind of too much for me to think about for 2020, but I don't think that what you're saying is necessarily too far off.
Yeah, I
And
mean,
why not experiment with it?
exactly. Yeah, I think that's one of the hallmarks that I've loved about the CIO Symposium, is that there's an always, the taking risks is kind of a feature of this event. So introducing something new. So while this one was somewhat forced on us, and it really plays into the DNA of the event, which is, hey, let's give it a go. So I'm looking forward to that. Even going even further with augmented reality. So let's see, what's the calendar of events that you've got scheduled for the remainder of 2020? Kicking off in June. What's the date on the June?
Okay, so we have, I get my notes out here. So we have June 10th. So this is the Digital Ready Enterprise. Well, I should say, so the events tentatively are scheduled on the second Wednesday of every month, but if it may be a little bit more flexible than that because there have been some conflicts that have been pointed out. So stay tuned on that. But roughly speaking, that middle, early second week, I would say, of the month, we'll have it. And so, like I say, the digital ready enterprise, then the post pandemic enterprise will then get into enhancing, customer experience and decision making through technology. That'll be coming in August. And then we're going to get into business resiliency in September. And finally, we'll be getting into the digital culture and agile techniques in October, and that'll close out the series for 2020. And that's actually a pretty good chunk of the panel topics. Not all of them that we're planning for the symposium, but a pretty good chunk.
That's great. That's a good bite at the. That's a good first bite at the digital learning series for 2021, and it's impressive that you put that together really since mid March or late March, and off and running. So that's fantastic.
Yeah, so mid March, late March, I was working for Lindsay Anderson. I was the associate chair. So that was one of the agreements of taking the job, that we ensure a smooth transition. And as you mentioned, I'd been a volunteer. I actually started this job April 14th. So there you have it.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Well, I'm really looking forward to it. And as I said, we're going to open it up to questions shortly. But this has been a great conversation, and I think that it's a lot of planning has gone into getting it even this far, and it's really come together excellently. So thanks very much for joining us. This is Alan Tate. He is the executive chair of the MIT Sloan CIO Symposium, the inaugural chair of the MIT Sloan CIO Symposium Digital Learning Series. And my name is Christopher Reichert, the treasurer of the MIT Sloan Boston Alumni Association. So we're going to open up to questions shortly. So thanks very much, Alan.
Thank you, Christopher.
So one of the questions that came in, and I encourage other people to keep adding questions that they're flowing in here on the Q&A, was talk about the membership model with regard to people who are unemployed through pandemic, and how that kind of leads into 2021.
Yeah, so I mean, for 2020, there's not an official membership model. It's just the supporter model where a cumulative contribution gives you a discount for the 2021 symposium. So for 2021, we are exploring having a more complete membership model where there'll be specific benefits to people who make a contribution above a certain amount. Right now, we're looking at about $49 a month or $500 a year. However, we're also looking at a tiered membership model where the amount that you would contribute to be a supporter would be less if you were a student or a government person or perhaps Sloan alumni. It would be the same kind of different classifications that we have for ticket prices at the symposium.
Excellent. Another question someone mentioned here was that there seems like a lot of some of the topics sound like a subcommittee in waiting. Are you looking for volunteers to help you organize panels or suggest speakers? And if so, how would they go about engaging?
So I do have a panel that does suggest topic and speakers, and we make it meet on a regular basis. But if you're interested in volunteering for the symposium, I suggest you reach out directly to me and let's talk.
And one of the topics that was suggested by one of our viewers was change cambietics, which, I guess it's cambietics, which is the study of change. Do you see, I think pivoting to a virtual symposium as well as the whole kind of remote working environment that is probably going to be our reality for quite a while, gives us an opportunity to explore that from a technology management perspective. Has that topic come up at all in some of the planning?
So that topic has not come up for me, but it sounds like it would be a very interesting topic. And it does, I do think that the virtual learning series, should we decide to continue this into 2021, and especially if we begin adding a mixture of events during the month. So, 2020, we kept it simple because it is a trial. So it's one webinar a month. But in 2021, as the concept evolves, we can experiment with other types of content delivery, perhaps additional webinars for the month, and explore some of these other topics that really wouldn't quite fit into the one-day symposium event. And that's why I feel like if we decide to do both in parallel, they'd be very complementary products. That's what I hope.
I agree. I think there's a lot of opportunity to kind of, go in many directions on this. Another question we had was about business continuity and disaster recovery. I think that, this has highlighted probably weaknesses in business continuity plans and contingencies for organizations. And I think that there's a great opportunity to roll that into a topic, whether that actually we have time to organize a good panel for the virtual series, digital learning series, or for 2021. I think that's a great topic to raise. And one question actually from our CIO award winner, Shamim Mohammed, is, are we looking to do a corporate membership option so companies can send many people to multiple participants? Welcome, Shamim, by the way.
So, Shaman, I'll pay you $20 on the side for that question. Actually, we have a group of people within the organizing team who are looking at a tiered membership model. And one of the ideas that came out when they were briefing me on it was exactly what you're talking about, the corporate membership. So yes, that's definitely being discussed. The membership model is complicated, and so I'm expecting that the organizing team is going to have to discuss it over the trial period between now and October. So all these ideas are going to be subject to change, but absolutely, I think it's a great idea.
Yeah, and also we've got some other comments we have here about pricing for small businesses. I don't know if you have any thoughts on that now, or if there's a way for people to reach out and contact you or the organizing team about different ideas and suggestions about that. Is there an email address that they should use for that?
Well, they can always send ideas to info@mitcio.com. We have a team that receives that email address, and so any comments can come that way. Also, comments can be put on through Twitter or Facebook or LinkedIn. We have a presence there, and we do monitor those comments. But info@mitcio.com is the easiest and most straightforward way to communicate with us.
Excellent. And there was a question about the contribution component in the membership side. Is that required I guess what's the question? Is it required to participate in the digital events, or is it only really for the discounts to 2021? In other words, does that put you in the hopper for the discounts for 2021?
So the concept is that the webinar content would remain free. So that's going to be available to anybody. But what we're looking for is we're looking to drive a model where the audience has an opportunity to be supporters of the event. And I believe that the more we can get audience support, the more flexibility we have in terms of delivering the content that the audience wants. If you become a supporter above a certain level, then I'd like to build out other benefits, including exclusive online social media groups, perhaps access to an online forum, the ability to network with other members in the community. These would be benefits for those people that reach the supporter level above a cap. But in terms of actually getting access to the webinars, those will be available to everyone, at least the live webinars.
That's great. I think that kind of ties into the MIT ethos of, giving the information and lessons out as much as possible for free. I saw here that Irving Blatsky-Berger, welcome Irving. Always glad to have you on board. Was talking about a digital innovation showcase, organizing a digital innovation showcase. And so what are your thoughts about that sometime in the fall? Or are you a little busy?
Well, I think that would be an interesting idea. So just to give a little history on this, in March when COVID-19 hit, we were scrambling to figure out what to do. The Innovation Showcase is traditionally an event at the symposium that happens, at 5 o'clock. That's where people come out of the symposium. We have tables set up with a lot of startup companies that have been selected by the committee. And
that's arguably, I'd say, one of the most popular elements
it's that. Well, yes, and of course, that's also the time in the symposium where the bar opens.
I wasn't going to mention that, but okay.
Well, I mean,
there's no virtual component to that, right?
Yeah, there's no virtual component to that. But I guess my point is that was one of the elements that we just felt that there was no way to really, continue that. And so for the symposium, the CIO award, the thing that we did on May 19th, that was the piece that we felt we were able to continue, and we did continue that. And now with the digital learning series, we're going to continue some part of the panel discussions. I mean, an online innovation showcase, I think it's a great idea. I don't know that we could pull it off in 2020. That sounds like it might be beyond our reach, but I would love to talk about it as a possibility for 2020.
And if anyone out there has suggestions on how we might do that, if they've seen or used the technology that can facilitate that, we're all ears. We're very much a hallmark of the CIO Symposium is experimentation. So we're willing to dive in and give things a go. This is a good example of that.
Yeah.
So one of the other hallmarks of the CIO Symposium is the inclusion of Sloan and MIT professors and thought leaders. How is that part being retained in the digital learning series?
So I continue to recruit both moderators and speakers from MIT Sloan. So some of the people that are being onboarded for the digital learning series right now are Stephanie Warner, Carrie Perlson, Nick Vandermuir, Christine Derry, and some others as well. But I should say that we're also looking at, for the digital learning series, establishing a deeper set of partnerships with MIT groups that go beyond the Sloan School, and being able to pull in some of those speakers as well. And that is an effort that's really just ramping up right now. It's going to take us a while to get those connections. I mean, a lot of the connections we have, say, with IDE and Scissor, those have been established for a long time. So we already have a relationship, and some of the other ones are newer, and it'll take time for us to get to know those people.
Yeah, no, it is. I mean, we're sort of pivoting pretty quickly here. So how many of the topics from 2020 are you kind of rolling into the digital learning series in the coming months?
So I would say that there's anywhere from 7 to 10. It depends on the schedule itself is not completely set, although I would compare it to the symposium. I don't know how much people know the schedule, but the agenda for the symposium is often fairly tentative until it gets very close to the date. In fact, there's a whole process where people vote on the panels that they want, and so forth and so on. So for the digital learning series, I've had to take those panel topics, get speakers who had talked about participating in May, find a date in the fall where they're available, and then line up speakers which is an activity that we usually do in February and March, but then when COVID-19 hit, that didn't get completed. So basically, I would say about half the topics for the symposium be covered. However, I do think that the overall thrust of the digital learning series will shift a little bit in the sense that, I'll just remind people the original theme of the symposium was designing your enterprise for sustained success. And I would say that the overall theme for the digital learning series is going to be something more along the lines of, leading a post-pandemic enterprise, which is kind of the situation that everybody is in right now.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think everyone's sort of scrambling. In fact, one of the questions that we got was, can some of the B2B customer engagements be more digital? Will they become more digital? In other words, do we need to, we as event organizers and other event organizers, in-person event organizers, really need to visit how virtual events are going to become better learning experiences and engagement processes for B2B in the way that B2C has probably been doing for years, which I guess is a learning process for us, right?
Well, I think it's a learning process for more or less everybody. I know that a lot of people were used to working at home, and it was different before COVID-19. I was just speaking to a colleague the other day who said that now he's in Zoom meetings, all the time, and everybody is online all of a sudden, and they're getting used to it. People are adapting their workflow. I think businesses will have to do the same thing. As far as other virtual events, honestly, I try to attend as many other virtual events as I can, or talk to the organizers about other virtual events. I think that we're going to see a lot of events get more sophisticated. We're bringing in professional people to help with the audio and video for this event. And we're trying to evolve and innovate as fast as we can. But I know that a lot of other people are trying to do the same thing. So it's all of a sudden become a very competitive market. And I expect there's going to be a lot of innovation.
Yeah, it's been interesting to see even the late night talk show hosts in the first couple of episodes that they did. It was very dodgy and very, ad hoc. But now, if you watch Colbert or any one of those, Seth Meyers, that they really upped their production quality amazingly. So I wanted to mention three things that I want to throw out to our attendees. This is a volunteer event, so a volunteer run event. So we're always looking for ideas from you guys out there on what are great topics. And Alan, just give us some those links again: email address, Twitter, and whatever else you want to throw out there so people can reach out.
So you have at MIT CIO, which is the Twitter handle. We also have a MIT CIO page on LinkedIn, and we have a MIT CIO page on Facebook, which you can search and find those. I don't remember the handle, but MIT CIO pretty much will get you there. In terms of email, info@mitcio.com will get to me, as well as some others that monitor that email address. So all those work.
Excellent. And I think also, one of the questions that we had, and you kind of touched on earlier, is the idea that a virtual conference ironically gives us the ability to draw on more attendees from far-flung places that can't get to Boston or Cambridge in May. So there's a great opportunity to engage internationally more virtually. I think one of the challenges, of course, is access. One of our attendees from the Philippines mentioned that sometimes digital access isn't as available for remote areas or people of different access to technology in their homes or communities and whatnot. So I think that's kind of an ongoing challenge for all of us. I think the good news for what we're trying to do is that this webinar, in addition to the upcoming webinars, we're all going to be available free online. And so if you miss it on the day, you can revisit it in the future. So.
Yeah, I mean, I saw that question too, and I totally agree that, access to digital technology is an ongoing problem. It it reminds me of the type of problem that a startup company that might have participated in the inclusive innovation competition that I mentioned earlier. I used to enjoy judging companies, and they would come up with ways of either making the economy more inclusive or otherwise having a positive impact on access or jobs or financial funds. I don't know what the solution is, but I think it would be a great topic to talk about and debate. Um, and you're right. I do think that as this thing evolves, we're going to reach a larger international audience, and also it's very likely we may begin to reach an audience of people who are emerging earlier in their career, although that's not to say that we're not going to target the CIO, especially with the anchor webinar once a month, because that's the core of what we're talking about, the CIO leadership. But I welcome the ability to diversify as this grows. And I should say that we are monitoring the people who register. We're also going to be sending out regular surveys. So the whole idea is every month, right, to gather that data, sit down with a group of people, try to take the feedback and make adjustments. And so I can't really predict exactly where this is going to go, but I will say that we're going to be reading the feedback every single month and adjusting as we go.
I agree, and I think one of the questions was, are there any journal articles that'll support the upcoming webinars? And I would throw that back out to our viewers and say that we're looking for ideas from your side as well. There is knowledge, there's great knowledge out there, and I used to say at the in-person symposium that there's as much experience in the audience as there is up on stage, and so and the same thing is true for the virtual. So if you have articles, if you see a topic coming up and you think there's an article that could be useful for expanding and extending the conversation, please send it to us, and we will look to put it up on our website or make it part of the conversation as well. And I think a great example of that is, I personally had never heard of organizational cambietic, so I want to thank David for that question. But that's a great example of a topic that may not be part of our initial conversation, but it's something to write down, make a note of, and see how it might be part of the conversation. So keep them coming.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, we're putting the seeds in the ground, watering the plants. We use an old metaphor, and it'll be up to everybody to see what the harvest brings.
Absolutely. So I think with that, we might close out today's session. This recording will be available online. Alan, is this going to be on the MITCIO.com website, or how are we distributing this?
Well, we have a YouTube channel, so we will upload these to YouTube once they go through post production.
And all attendees will get an email, right, with the survey as well.
Yeah, everybody will get it. So when you leave the webinar, you'll have a chance to fill out a survey. That'll also come in a follow-up email, so you have two chances to fill out the survey. The videos are going to go to post-production. They're going to be cleaned up both from a video and an audio perspective, uploaded to YouTube. And then typically what we've done for the symposium is provide a link on our website to the video on YouTube. And so I expect that we will be doing the same type of thing as we go through the digital learning series panels. And by the way, the CIO award is almost ready to go. So that'll be hosting probably either by the end of the week or early next week.
Yeah, that was a great conversation. I really
It really was.
Yeah, enjoyed watching that. So the last question we got here is, what's the best way to reach out to local CIOs for mutual learning? I mean, I think we have the LinkedIn group, the Global CIO LinkedIn group. Any other suggestions on how people can, thoughts on teasings, at least on hints at how we're going to include more conversational paths for attendees?
Yeah, well, so
Opportunities.
what one thought is to have uh, groups that are social media groups that are only the people who are members, where we know exactly who they are, and then we can
Mhm.
do things like provide virtual business cards, that type of thing. But we've also talked about the idea of having an online forum, so where you can go in and ask questions among your peer members, get those answered, and connect with other people. Uh, I will say, I mean, we don't have all the solutions, but it is a lot of people have made it very clear that as we're evolving the digital learning series, the networking is just a really important component to the
Absolutely.
audience. And frankly, there's been some skepticism as to whether we can replicate the networking that you get at an in-person event. You know, some people have come out and said, well, an in-person event is unique. Can't do it in a virtual setting. I don't know. I'm that may be true, but maybe we can do things in a virtual setting that are superior to what you get in an in-person setting. We'll see.
That's the fun of the experimentation, right?
Yeah, exactly. We'll we're going to be trying a lot of things, and we'll see where it goes.
Yeah, it's interesting. People look back at Bill Gates or Steve Jobs or others and say, "Wow, what geniuses! They foretold the future." Well, I would counter and say, actually, they created their future. So I think we're in the process of creating what the digital learning series will be and how that folds into the 17-year history of the MIT Sloan CIO Symposium and what the next 17 plus years will include. So I want to thank Alan for joining us today. Alan Tate, the executive chair of the MIT Sloan CIO Symposium and guiding light on the digital learning series. My name is Christopher Reichert. I'm the treasurer of the MIT Sloan Boston Alumni Association. So thanks for joining us today. We look forward to seeing you on future webinars.
Thanks, Christopher, and thanks to everybody. It was a pleasure.
Stay safe, stay healthy.
Definitely.